that was a lot, and we barely did anything yet. We haven't even built our web server. It still doesn't do anything. So let's make that happen. Let's make our server respond to requests at this point. So to do that, we need a web server. There are two main web servers, and the two big players are Apache and Nginx. You've probably heard of one or both. Nginx, if you've ever seen it, it looks like Nginx. It's one of those like you don't know how to say it until you hear someone else say it, and you're like, okay, I get it. So Nginx. Nginx does a lot of things. It's a web server. It's a reverse proxy. It's a forward proxy. It can do it. It can email proxy. Nginx is really, really powerful. It's written in C, so it's going to be faster than pretty much anything else you can possibly come up with. Faster than Node, depending on the use case, things like that. There's also Apache. Apache is great too. Apache has a lot of built-ins. It works well with Java. It works well with PHP right out of the box. For this case, we're using Nginx because it's faster, it's pretty configurable, and I just like it. But we can also use Apache. So we talked about I said reverse proxy in these kind of weird terms, but what does that mean? So when a request comes in from the internet, what happens then? We know sort of now how the internet works and how things happen. When it hits your server, how does it know where to go? Who's handling that request? We need some sort of web server in place to route that request to the right place, whether it be the database, the application you want to run to, or even another server. And that's what Nginx does. It just says, hey, there's a request coming in. Where should I route it? OK, go into the application. That's what I do. You can create and later when we create a Node application, we actually don't need Nginx to do that. We can route directly from the internet to our Node application, but that's not a good practice. Nginx is much faster, and it has a lot of capabilities that if we were to implement them in Node, would just be a pain in the butt because Nginx is specialized at this. And Nginx is always going to be faster than Node, like always. It's different language, different low-level things we won't go into. All right, so this is where it's going to get even messier. But it's OK. We're going to walk through it step by step, and I'll explain everything that's happening. So the first thing we have to do is we need to install Nginx. So we're going to use apt again. But this time we're using sudo because we're not running as root. So we're going to sudo apt install Nginx. And then we're going to start Nginx. And then we're going to navigate to our browser, to our server, and see what's happening. Is our web server actually up and running? So let's go ahead and do that now. So sudo apt install Nginx. And I'm going to say yes. OK, so now let's start Nginx. It may already be started, but let's just do this just to be sure. So sudo service Nginx start. All right, one small step for you, one giant leap for your web page. So now let's check out what we did. Is it working? So I'm going to grab my IP address because I'm not sure if my host name is up yet, but I'm just going to grab the IP. Is it up? Nope, still not working. Hey, instead of a blank page, we got the Nginx welcome page. So now you have officially hooked up your IP, domain was coming, it just takes time to propagate, to your server. Now we're doing something. Now we're in the realm of something that's a little bit more familiar as front-end engineers, which is building web pages and hooking them up. Don't celebrate yet. We still have a while to go to actually make it do more, but this is a good starting place. So one thing I want you to do is check out the default Nginx configuration. So I'm going to just do that here. So remember I said Nginx, most of your processes are going to be located in the etc file. So that's true for Nginx. So I'm just going to cd there, cd etc Nginx. We can do ls to check out. So there's sites available, sites enabled. This gets a little messy. It's hard to explain. It's like an Nginx thing. We're going to dance our way around that, and we'll fix it, make it easier to reason about. But for now, go to sites available, and we can use less to check it out. Sites available, and we're just going to look at the default configuration. So this is the default server configuration for Nginx. Remember I said things are going to get a little bit dicey and you're going to be like, what's going on here? I thought I was an engineer, but I don't recognize any of that stuff. That's OK. Nginx configs are their own kind of language itself, but they're all really powerful and every line has a reason for being there. So let's explore kind of what this configuration is doing. So the first thing you see is that root. That's just the base directory for your requests. All of that kind of welcome to Nginx page, that's located in /var/www/html. And it's just pulling one of those HTML files right down here. So that's where that page is. We can edit it. I think the next exercise, we're going to touch it a little bit. But we might skip that in the interest of time. But if you want to edit that default page, that's where you do it. If you only want to serve an HTML page, you can just do that from here, and we could be done. We don't need an application or anything. Nginx can serve HTML pages just fine. The location block says, where am I going? From paths. The root path is always slash, very similar to your operating system. Slash is just root. But if we want to say slash go gem go, and we want it to go somewhere else, we just add another location block. So we can do routing within Nginx. We can do it on our application level in Node. In our server itself, doesn't really matter. But Nginx has a capability. These, they kind of look like programs, but they're called directives. And they essentially say, hey, do this within a server block or a location block. In this case, it's try files. It's going to try to serve an HTML page. If it's not there, it's going to serve a 404 page. We're not going to use try files too much, but we will use a directive called proxy pass, which is just going to proxy all of our requests into Node from Nginx. And then I talked about these are where the default pages live. So let's go ahead and touch that. I want you to feel you have ownership of your server. Let's go ahead and edit this default page. So the default page is located in cd/var, where most of our application will live, in the HTML. And there's no index.html, just this long index.nginx-debian.html. Let's just go ahead and make an index.html page. Or you can edit the existing one. Doesn't really matter for this exercise. Touch it, and I'm going to say hello world. And we know from our earlier experiments that this is perfectly valid, semantically correct HTML. Oh man, how did I get into this spot? I didn't sudo when I should have sudoed. And now I've edited this file, and I don't remember how to save anymore. How do I save? I need sudo permission. I might just quit this one. There is a command to do this if you ever get into this situation, and I will share it later, but it's kind of long and it doesn't really make sense for this case. So I'm going to cheat here, and I'm going to say quit bang because I should have sudoed this file. Sudo vi index.html. Good thing I didn't get too far into my wonderful web page where I got stuck. Say hello world. Now I can write quits. And if we go back to the browser, what should we see? We see a hello world, because it picks up the index.html before it picks up the Debian file. And there you go. You made your web page. You hooked it up to your domain. Still not working on the domain yet, but you hooked up to your server. Now we're starting to move. All right, so Nginx is great. It can do a lot of things, and we could actually create entire applications just running out of Nginx. But let's move more into the domain we're comfortable with as front engineers. Let's move into JavaScript world. We're going to use Node.js to actually host our application. So the request will come into the server. It'll go to Nginx, and Nginx will proxy it to Node.js. So we're going to go through a few steps here. The first one is making sure we have the latest Node.js source. If you just do an apt install Node.js, it's probably going to be like version 10 or 12. which would work, but we want a more recent version. So this is just saying, hey, pull from Debian and nodesource.com, and we want the setup for version 19. We're going to execute it using the sudo command into bash, and it's just going to execute it to its own shell, and it's going to download all that things and package it up. And that way, when we do apt-get Node.js, it'll be the latest version linked to the latest source. Make sense? I know, your brain is hurting at this point, because we've touched on so many different things. We're almost there. We're in the home stretch for getting this all hooked up. So now we're going to install Node.js, but if we just install from apt, it's going to be an older version. We want 19 because we're on the bleeding edge here. So we're going to use the curl command to pull from node source, the Debian version. We're going to execute that in our shell using sudo, and it's going to pipe it into a new shell. It's going to run the install. That way, when we do apt-get install Node.js, it's going to be the latest version rather than the general package maintain version that they have.